In the mountains of Arizona, there's a place where men have gone looking for gold and never came back. Some disappeared without a trace. Others were found dead in the desert. And a few returned with stories they could never prove. All of them were searching for the same thing, a hidden gold mine. A mine that was said to contain rich, untouched veins of gold. A mine that one man claimed to have found. His name was Jacob Waltz. Jacob Waltz. Before he died, Waltz told a story about a mine hidden deep in the Superstition Mountains. Superstition Mountains. He described gold so rich it could be taken straight from the rock. Gold that no one else had found. Gold that he had kept secret for years. After his death in 1891, people began searching. Not just a few, hundreds, then thousands. Some believed the story, others didn't. But that didn't stop them from going into the mountains. Because if the mine was real, it could be worth a fortune. And if it wasn't, they would find out the hard way. To understand the legend of the Lost Dutchman Mine, you have to understand the man at the centre of it, Jacob Waltz. He was not a famous explorer, not a wealthy businessman, just a miner. A German immigrant who came to the American West during the gold rush era, like thousands of others searching for opportunity. Waltz spent years working across the Southwest, mining, travelling, surviving. Like most miners, he didn't become rich, at least not publicly. But people who knew him noticed something strange. From time to time, Waltz would appear with high-quality gold, not small flakes, not dust, but rich ore. Gold that looked like it came from a very productive source. And yet, no one knew where he was getting it. He never revealed the location. He never took partners. He worked alone. That alone made people suspicious, because in the harsh environment of Arizona, mining alone was difficult and dangerous. Still, Waltz continued this pattern for years, disappearing into the wilderness, returning with gold, and saying nothing about where it came from. Then, near the end of his life, everything changed. In 1891, Jacob Waltz became seriously ill. He knew he was dying, and for the first time, he began to talk. He spoke of a mine, a hidden place deep in the Superstition Mountains, a place difficult to reach, a place he had carefully kept secret. He described landmarks, paths, clues. But like many dying confessions, his story was incomplete. Some details were clear, others were vague, and some may have been misunderstood entirely. When Waltz died, he left behind something powerful, not a map, not exact coordinates, but a story. And that story was enough to start one of the longest treasure hunts in American history. After the death of Jacob Waltz in 1891, the story of his hidden mine did not stay quiet for long. It spread, first among miners, then across Arizona, and eventually across the entire American West. People were drawn to one idea, a secret gold mine that one man had found and taken to his grave. The location Waltz described pointed toward the Superstition Mountains. Superstition Mountains. At the time, this region was already known for being dangerous. Rugged terrain, extreme heat, limited water, and almost no clear trails. But that didn't stop people. The first searchers were experienced miners, men who believed they could follow Waltz's clues. They studied his story carefully. They tried to reconstruct his routes. They compared landmarks to real geography. Some claimed they came close. A few even said they found traces of gold, but none could confirm the mine. Still, the possibility was enough. Because if Waltz had truly been bringing back rich ore for years, then the source had to exist somewhere. And that meant one thing. The mine was still out there, waiting. As more people entered the Superstition Mountains, a pattern began to emerge. Some never returned. At first, these disappearances were explained logically. The desert is unforgiving. Temperatures can exceed 40 degrees C, 104 degrees F. Water sources are scarce. Navigation is difficult. It was easy to get lost, easy to underestimate the terrain, easy to die. But over time, the number of deaths began to attract attention. Searchers were found dead in remote areas. Some showed signs of dehydration. Others had injuries that suggested falls or accidents. And in some cases, the circumstances were unclear. One of the most well-known cases involved a man named Adolf Ruth. In 1931, Ruth entered the Superstition Mountains in search of the Lost Mine. He was well prepared. He carried maps, notes, supplies, and he was determined to find what others could not. But he never came back. Months later, his remains were discovered in the mountains. His death became one of the most famous cases connected to the search for the mine, and it changed how people viewed the story. Because now, the Lost Dutchman Mine was no longer just about gold. It was about risk. Real risk. Men were not just chasing a legend. They were risking their lives, and some were losing them. Still, the searches continued. By the early 1900s, the story of the Lost Dutchman Mine had grown far beyond a single rumour. It had become something stronger, a belief, not because of fantasy, but because of evidence that seemed difficult to ignore. The strongest argument came back to one man, Jacob Waltz. For years, Waltz had shown gold that didn't match the typical low-grade material found in many nearby areas. This was high-quality ore, rich, dense, different. Miners who examined it believed it came from a very productive source. Not a random find, not luck, a mine. And not just any mine, a very rich one. There were also stories from people who claimed to have seen Waltz return from the mountains with fresh gold multiple times. He had no visible partners, no known claim, no official mining site. Yet somehow, he kept producing. That alone raised questions. Then there were the clues he left behind. Descriptions of specific rock formations, narrow canyons, hidden paths, unusual landmarks. None of them were exact, but they were detailed enough to feel real, enough for experienced miners to take seriously. And there was one more factor, the region itself. The Superstition Mountains are part of a geologically complex area where gold deposits do exist. Superstition Mountains, not in the quantities Waltz described, but enough to make the idea plausible. So by the time new searchers entered the mountains, they weren't chasing a fantasy, they were chasing a possibility. And in the world of gold, that's all it takes. As decades passed, the search for the Lost Dutchman Mine changed. It was no longer just miners. It became something else. Obsession. People came from across the country. Some were experienced prospectors. Others had no mining experience at all. But they all shared one belief. They could be the one to find it. Searchers spent months mapping the mountains. They followed old trails, studied Waltz's story, tried to match his descriptions to real locations. Some built entire expeditions around the search. Others went alone, returning again and again, year after year. Some claimed they found signs, traces of old mining activity, pieces of ore, abandoned camps, but nothing definitive. Still, the stories continued, and with every new claim, more people came. The search began to take on a pattern. People would enter the mountains full of confidence, certain they had solved the mystery, certain they had found the location. But most of them left with nothing, or didn't leave at all, because the deeper they went, the harder it became to turn back. By the mid-20th century, the search for the Lost Dutchman Mine had already claimed multiple lives. And unlike shipwrecks or documented gold shipments, these losses were scattered, personal, and often difficult to fully explain. The case of Adolf Ruth was only the most well-known. There were others, Searchers who entered the Superstition Mountains alone and were never seen again. Superstition Mountains. In some cases, remains were later found. Dehydration, exposure, accidents in rough terrain. The official explanations were often straightforward, but the pattern was consistent. The mountain did not forgive mistakes, and the search for gold often pushed people beyond safe limits. There were also reports of conflicts between searchers. The area attracted not only hopeful prospectors, but also people who guarded what they believed to be their discoveries. Tensions could rise, especially when someone believed they were close. Over time, the story of the Lost Dutchman Mine became tied not just to gold, but to danger. Real, documented danger. Not mystery, not myth, but the kind of risk that comes from isolation, heat, and human determination. Still, even as the risks became clearer, people kept going. Despite more than a century of searching, one fact has never changed. No one has ever definitively proven the existence of the Lost Dutchman Mine. There have been claims, many of them. Some people said they found it. Others claimed they saw rich veins of gold. A few even brought back small samples, but none of these discoveries were ever confirmed. No verified location, no active mine, no consistent production. Nothing that could prove, beyond doubt, that Waltz's mine truly exists. Part of the problem is the nature of the clues. The information left by Jacob Waltz was incomplete. Some details may have been misunderstood. Others may have been deliberately hidden. And some may have simply been wrong. Another problem is the terrain itself. The Superstition Mountains are vast, complex, and difficult to navigate. Canyons look similar. Rock formations repeat. Landmarks can be misleading. Even experienced searchers can become disoriented. And over time, the environment changes. Storms reshape the land. Trails disappear. Rockfalls alter the landscape, which means that even if the mine once existed, it may not look the same today, or it may no longer be accessible at all. More than a century after the death of Jacob Waltz, the search has never fully stopped. But it has changed. Today, the Superstition Mountains are no longer an unregulated frontier. Superstition Mountains. Much of the area is now protected land. Permits are required for certain activities. Some zones are restricted, and large-scale excavation is not allowed. This alone has limited modern treasure hunting. Unlike the 1800s, people can no longer simply enter the mountains and start digging wherever they want. But that hasn't stopped the search entirely. Modern treasure hunters still explore the region. Only now, they use different tools: GPS mapping, satellite imagery, geological analysis, drones. Some believe that modern technology can succeed where earlier searchers failed. That the clues left behind by Waltz can finally be matched to real locations with precision. From time to time, new claims appear. Someone says they found a promising site. Someone reports discovering gold-bearing rock. Someone believes they've solved the mystery. But just like in the past, none of these claims have been confirmed. No verified mine. No proven location. The search continues. But the result remains the same. So what was the Lost Dutchman Mine? A real discovery, or a misunderstanding that grew into something larger? There are two main possibilities. The first is that Jacob Waltz or found a rich gold deposit, a hidden location, difficult to reach, one that he chose never to reveal. If that's true, then the mine may still exist, hidden somewhere in the mountains, untouched, waiting. The second possibility is simpler. Waltz may have found small amounts of gold in different places, and over time, the story became exaggerated. Details changed. Clues were misinterpreted. And what began as a real but limited discovery turned into something much larger than reality. There's also a third possibility, that the mine existed, but is no longer accessible, collapsed, buried, or lost to time, which would explain why no one has been able to find it again. Each explanation fits part of the story, but none explain everything, and that's what keeps the search alive. More than 130 years have passed since the death of Jacob Waltz, and still, the Lost Dutchman Mine remains one of the most famous unresolved treasure stories in the American West. No confirmed discovery, no proven location, no final answer. What makes this story different is not just the gold, it's the uncertainty. Because unlike shipwrecks or buried treasure, there is no guarantee the mine still exists, or ever existed in the way people believe. But there is also no proof that it doesn't, and as long as that uncertainty remains, people will keep searching. The mountains are still there, the clues are still studied, and somewhere in that landscape there may still be something hidden, or nothing at all. Which leads to one final question. If you had the chance to search the Superstition Mountains, would you go, knowing that many before you believed they were closed, and never found what they were looking for, or worse, never came back?